The meltdown was so jarring. It happened over a period of weeks, and as opposed to, for example, the Great Depression, which happened over a period of years. And my optimism and my study of history tells me that the reason it happened so quickly is that the global economy is linked in a way that it was never linked in the 1930s. And if it was able to deteriorate that quickly, it could also restart as quickly.
Of course, coming back quickly means the United States and people who do business here have to understand the whole global picture. Let's talk about your global view. You recently were invited to go to Nigeria. In fact, the only LA businessman in this community to do so, right?
Yes.
What did you talk about? Why did you go there? What was discussed?
Well, the topic of the conference was how to eliminate poverty in Africa. And what I talked about, well, they say that financial crises are the mother of all inventions. Mm-hmm. And my message to the audience, which was primarily Africans, was that they needed to use this financial crisis as an opportunity to put their house in orders. One thing is for sure, in the short term, Africa can no longer count on the kindness of strangers. There just isn't any money going to Africa right now. All the aid has been cut off dramatically. Mm-hmm. And so my message to them was that this can be a blessing, actually, a blessing in disguise. I think you need to remember two things. One is that the Western world didn't get rich by aid, and instead it got rich by financing entrepreneurs. And secondly, pockets of the West, notwithstanding substantial aid, failed miserably.
How do you get a section of the world or a part of the world not used to Western ways in terms of finance? How do you get them changed to accept our way of doing business?
I think what I have seen in the last 2 years of traveling throughout Africa is that there is a new breed of African entrepreneur out there that has bootstrapped their businesses. Basically, without any capital, they've created businesses. And I think if they could have access to small amounts of capital, venture capital, the way we do here in the United States, I think you would see an enormous cultural change in Africa. And I think you're starting to see that already.
Where does the money come from, within or without?
The money thus far has come from the sovereign wealth funds. China is one of the largest investors, and they've been an early investor in Africa. And they are funding large infrastructure projects, and they're also looking at, and one of the things that I'm doing is creating a bank in Africa that will be the first entrepreneurs bank of Africa that will lend to small and mid-sized businesses which have been completely starved of capital up to this point.
All right, we know now that America is no longer an island of business. It has to do business with everybody, and what happens over there affects here, and what happens here affects over there. What did you see in Nigeria, or experience in Nigeria, that is eventually going to affect Los Angeles?
Well, I'll tell you, I think it comes down to access to capital. You look at portions of Los Angeles, like South Los Angeles, which are economically depressed zones. And I think one of the ways to change that is really the same way that you change Africa. You bet on entrepreneurs. They may not always have the education credentials. They may not have track records, but they have good ideas. They've got good instincts, and you need to start betting on people like that. When you do that, you're going to see a complete sea change in the level of economic activity in those areas. And one other thing I would just say is that the perception of risk in the world has changed. We lived in a world over the last decade where we thought a lot of things we were investing in weren't risky. Today, investments in Africa and South Los Angeles, on a relative basis, don't look as risky.
Interesting. Let's end this with a little philosophy, your own business philosophy. You know, I've often heard that success in business has to be tied to a sense of ruthlessness. But, you know, I sense in you success in business with a tinge of compassion, especially the way you see Africa and other nations taking part in the world economy.
You know, I'm very fortunate that I'm in a position right now that I can focus my energies and my activities on things that I'm passionate about. And one of the lessons that I learned a long time ago is to achieve, for my own happiness, to achieve real happiness, one has to do more than just meet a bottom line and make money. One has to have a profound impact on people's lives. That's the way you create a legacy. And in Africa, that legacy will be taking, you know, a continent where 80% of the people don't have electricity and turning that and allowing that energy economy to completely bypass the carbon economy and not deal with all of the pollution and environmental issues we have here. And secondly, Africa is today 80% unbanked. And I want to create banking institutions there that are going to create the basis to create an entrepreneurial revolution over there.
Are there enough people in this country, and I'm talking about business people, business-minded people, who share your vision?
I think there are, and I think that there are perhaps fewer pioneers, fewer people who are willing to be the first to go in. But I think when you lead the way and you show that the businesses are viable, I think there are hordes of people who have interest in it. I can't even begin to tell you the level of interest I get as I go across this country, the United States, and talk about the projects we're doing in Africa.
Is there going to be an amalgamation between your bank and your energy company over there, do you think?
I think they're separate. They're separate businesses, and they're designed to do separate things. But one thing's for sure, the bank that we create over there, and the banks we create over there, will fund new clean energy projects way beyond ZBB Energy.
Mm-hmm. All right, Bill Mundell, thank you very much. You are a pioneer. You do see things other people don't see, and we wish you great luck, not only for your own personal welfare, but for all the rest of us. Because, again, what you do is going to affect a lot of people, isn't it?
Well, I thank you, Bob. It's always a pleasure to be with you.
Thank you, Bill. What a vision and a hope, eliminating the carbon footprint in both Africa and China.
There you have it, a Facebook for political hopefuls, storing electricity in green energies. Los Angeles business is taking the lead on some of the most significant issues of our times.
You know, it might not be a matter of how President Obama is rated by leading economists on the Wall Street Journal. In this crisis, it appears to be more about what individuals are doing to fight the despair and cynicism that continues to afflict our economy.
Thank you for joining us on LA Business Today. I'm Sharon Jimenez.
And I'm Bob Jimenez. We'll see you again next time.
I'm an Iyengar yoga teacher here in Los Angeles, and you're watching LA City View, Channel 35, Our City, Our Channel. Namaste.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Ad Hoc Committee on Economic Recovery and Reinvestment, our special meeting for today, Friday, October 23rd, 2009. And we are here in the John Farrow Council Chambers, where we meet every Friday to review the city's economic recovery and reinvestment funds from ARA and the stimulus package. So with that, right now we have just myself, the chair, here on time. But Council Members Perry and Hahn and Weezer and Parks and Rosendahl and Wesson will join us. But why don't we go ahead and start? I know it's relatively light week, but why don't we hear a general update on where we're at? Good morning.
Good morning. Jim Clark, Director of Federal Relations. I just wanted to talk to you briefly about the meeting that we had this week with the Governmental Accountability Office that came to town. Spent about 2 hours with our budget folks and the Controller's office and CAO's office and in our office as well too. They're gathering information as part of a report that they're putting together that'll be it'll be made public on December 10th, I think, is the deadline that they've got for it. And they're looking at 16 states across the country, and within each state they're looking at 2 local governments, ourselves and Sacramento County are the 2 for California. And this is a study of the impact on budgets of the ARA funds. And I think it was a very good meeting. We gave them a lot of good information that they could use about some of the problems that we've seen, as well as some of the benefits from it. So,
you want to summarize briefly for our viewers at home what some of those things were that how you did summarize what the impact on our budget's been and what's worked successfully and what's been less successful?
Well, the thing that we have to acknowledge both is that while the ARA funds at the state level and for school districts are in the form of funds that are available for budget stabilization, that's not the case with local government. And so we have a situation where we're potentially receiving millions and millions of dollars that are coming into the city from ARA funds for projects to work on. But at the same time, we're facing over here major budget problems and having to deal with furloughs and layoffs. And so for the public, that's difficult to understand. Why are you laying people off or furloughing people when at the same time you're receiving millions and millions of dollars? And that's because these funds that come in are basically siloed for very specific projects, and they're usually for new projects that don't allow you to supplant or take money that you were going to be using for local projects and then put that money over into something else. So that was an important distinction that we needed to make with them, and they understood that. I don't know, Bill, do you have any other observations on the
main one? All right. And you said that's going to come out December 10th? They're going to make
by December 10th. In fact, they told us that by the middle of November, they're going to have their comments ready, and they'll send them to us so that we can make sure that they accurately reflected what information we shared with them.
Okay. Great. All right. Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Bill Kreitz with the CAO's office. I would like to report to you that since last week, we have not received any grant awards. With respect to a report back from last week's meeting, you had specifically asked me to brief you on something I reported as being an application that was submitted for $3 million by, at the time, I said, by the Bureau of Street Services, and it was for a state energy program, a low-interest energy efficiency and financing program for something called the Bel Air Project. Well, I wanted to note that was erroneously reported. There was a mistake made, and that project is actually a street lighting project, for one thing, and it is not an ARA project, but rather a California Energy Commission project that retrofits street lighting in an area called Bel Air Series, which is near Beverly Glen, Sunset Boulevard, Sepulveda Boulevard, in Stone Canyon Reservoir. And the Bureau of Street Lighting is working with the state of California for this energy project, and the energy savings will pay back the loan, basically. So that is not an ARA-funded project, and as a result, we removed that $3 million from all the dashboards that it had been included in. So you will see a $3 million reduction in several of the dashboards.
That's part of the citywide conversion to LED lighting?
I believe it is, yes. Yes, and it's a 10-year program.
which isn't just being done in the Bel Air estates. I can testify to that. I know we started out in the Valley, I think in Council District 12. I know that we have some lights up in Council District 13, and we're going to be doing that in all residential areas of the entire city. So anyone who's listening who may think it's just for that area, I think that one was just pulled out of the citywide conversion to LED lights, which are much more energy efficient, and we're working with the Clinton Global Initiative on that, I know, as well.
That's correct.
Okay.
And if I might correct myself, it's not a 10-year program, but rather it's a 10-year payback
Right.
for that project. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
the installation, I think, is two years or something like that. Yeah, 3 years.
I don't recall, but I know it's not 10.
Yeah.
As
Should
I
have the
stated.
entire city.
If I can move on
Sure.
to the LA Recovery website, that's being redesigned. We should, at next Friday's meeting, we should have a go-live date for that redesigned website for LA Recovery. And I might also mention, this is something I always get wrong every week, but that website is recovery.lacity.org for those at home who would like to look at that website.
Okay.
Also, with respect to the OMB reports, you know that October 10th was the reporting deadline for the first quarter for the OMB reports. What we did in our office, in the CAO's office, we did an after-action report, and we have the results of that after-action report internally. We're also polling, or surveying, I should say, the departments who are part of that to get their opinion. We will combine those two, and we will have an after-action report which will guide us in improving the process for the January reporting.
Okay. That's a quarterly report now that they're asking for?
Yes, it is, to the OMB, yes.
Right.
Those are quarterly reports.
Okay.
Also, with respect to the website, we have added to that, I looked this morning, it wasn't added, but it will be later this morning, a grants management process flow chart. That's for the intranet internally for city departments to get a better sense of what the flow and what the sequence is for the OMB reporting. And we just updated that based upon the results of our recent reporting to OMB. Also, the 6 dashboards that we normally post on the website have been updated as of yesterday, and like I mentioned, they will show a reduction in applied for funds by the $3 million to reflect the elimination of that Bel Air project. Also, we did not have any applications submitted since last Friday's meeting. We are now at 140 grant projects that we've requested funding for a total of $1.4 billion if we were to get them all. And let's see here. We also have 78 grant awards at this point for $404 million, and we do not expect any applications to be submitted to the grantors in the next week between now and next Friday's meeting.
Okay.
I might add
Yeah.
one other. On the competitive grant side, we're tracking something like 33 grant categories. Now, some of these categories can have multiple submissions on them. We've heard back on 23 of those, so there's still 10 of those that are pending for us. So we're starting to get
10 entire categories of funding.
Yeah. Now, there could be additional rounds coming in whatever, but at least we know where we stand for most of them that we've submitted on.
I injured my hand, so I got to go for the fist bump.
Good morning. But we are waiting on a couple of big ones, and that's the Tiger Grant, which is the $1.5 billion that we have $81 million out, and also the smart grid demonstration projects that through DWP, several hundred $100 million worth of projects.
Come join me. Okay. So we have Mr. Rosendahl and Mr. Parks. We're at 78 grant awards out of 140 applications, and we're at $404 million. We just got a little update on the GAO visit, and that went well. We have next, I think, the energy block grant. So let's go to that.
Good morning. Gretchen Hardison of the Environmental Affairs
Good morning,
Department.
Gretchen.
We're here this morning to request authority to formally accept $250,000 of the city's $37 million Energy Efficiency and Conservation Block Grant. This is a direct formula allocation grant. We have come to visit you a couple of times to report on our plans and our successful conclusion of this initial round of public outreach to describe, to solicit public input on potential funding categories. We are working very hard right now to develop the strategy. We're pulling together a number of policy statements already made by the City Council and the Mayor, and to prepare a proposed expenditure plan that we hope to bring to you in just a couple of weeks. Today, again, we're requesting authority to accept the first $250,000. I do want to note that any funds that are remaining after this initial activity of preparing the strategy and developing the expenditure plan can be used throughout this fiscal year, actually through the end of July 2010. So our thoughts are to roll right into helping departments set up the early implementation of these programs so that we can make sure we're able to expend all these funds.
Mm-hmm. And this will be 100% of the overhead that we have for this, or is this just the planning piece and we expect some other piece to also go probably to staff costs and all of that in the implementation phase?
Yes, of the $250,000, we have budgeted $180,000 for personnel costs, including Cap 30 rates, which were the rates that were federally approved at the time we applied for the grant and were awarded the grant, and $70,000 for contractor services, including the outreach materials.
But then when we get the 37, we're anticipating some of that will be spent in departments?
Yes, definitely.
Such as the 80? Okay.
Yes.
All right. Well, we've certainly had a lot of discussion about the $37 million, and I think we've been at the forefront of the planning. Any outreach since our public meetings? Have we gotten additional written materials or any other input from stakeholders or individuals since then?
We've had a few contacts, email and telephone calls from some of the groups that we met out at our outreach meetings, in particular from the San Fernando Valley, the Valley Economic Alliance, and I'm going to mess up the name of the organization, but an organization involved in energy efficiency with artists and our art facilities out on the west side. So we've had some interesting contacts, folks who are looking at helping streamline computer systems, so we're trying to refer them to the appropriate departments.
Okay, great. All righty, any questions from Mr. Reznor?
What I liked about was when you came to the west side, the format that you used, which were tables and people sitting around tables and having real discussions, and not just one of these PowerPoint nothingnesses that goes nowhere, but a real substantive discussion. Out of those meetings, and I know some of my leaders from the west side were there and they took it very seriously, because we have in Mar Vista probably a solar program that rivals no other part of the city, and Venice, they're now trying to catch up with Mar Vista. So we got people like that. We have the whole go natural with the plants that meet the neighborhoods and stuff. And so there's been a lot of talk about energy and so on. Did you get anything in particular from any of those people that are continuing, especially some of those folks in that area there? Is there dialogue going on, or was it just the one-time meeting?
We expect some continuing dialogue. We're trying to knuckle down and conclude our analysis of all the comments we've received.
Yeah.
I have to admit I was not the point person on the energy efficiency and solar discussions, so I'm a little less familiar with the details of those. But we are certainly taking to heart everything that we heard and trying to factor that into the program-level suggestions that we'll be making to you in a couple of weeks. We know there's a lot of interest in assisting energy efficiency improvements in multifamily, and so we're doing our best to try to figure out how we can do that given the relatively short amount of time that we'll have to spend the block grant funds and what departments are capable of doing right now.
Okay, what I'd like is, before you make another formal presentation, that you meet with my staff and with the people in the community that I know have come to me about it since, and just see if we can tighten up some of those responses.
Thank you.
Love to do that.
Mr. Parks?
That's a similar question I have, is that is the timeline of when we'll get some feedback from these meetings, specifically the one that was at Expo, so that we can continue that push as it relates to people being made aware. And as you know, in certain communities that it's a matter of as much education about these issues as it is about what are your priorities. And I think we have to basically address both of those, because many of our, particularly communities I represent, do not have access to the internet, and so many of these things are just driven by word of mouth or particular community meetings. So we're very interested in keeping that rolling to educate people as to what are the options, and from the options, then how do we keep that dialogue rolling?
Thank you. Our strategy is due to the Department of Energy about the 18th, 20th of November. Prior to that, we can certainly speak directly with your staff about our thoughts at this point in time. But this strategy, we hope, will set up program areas that will allow different constituents to be involved as these programs roll out. So ongoing continuing education and outreach will be a critical component of the bulk of these programs. So we expect to see another big push for outreach and education January, February timeframe to really get involved in the nuts and bolts of the programs and how people can actually participate and apply to get funding.
And the other thing that's helpful for us is that there are times when we perceive, because the meeting is set at the Expo Center, that only the community goes to that meeting. But there are times in which, if we're made aware of other activities throughout the city, people are located or they work in those areas, they can take advantage. So even though it's in another part of the city, it's helpful. When you put this flyer out initially that had all the meetings on it, it gives people options, because the information is repetitive, and it just depends on, they can set a schedule if it's in close proximity with them.
Thank you. We'll try to continue to do that, so we post several options for folks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions on the energy efficiency block grant? If not, let's go ahead. I will move then to accept the funds and the CAO report. I'll move that forward today. Thank you. Do we have any public comment? All right. This meeting is adjourned. And you give us a quorum, so that's good.